Okay, so having never done a live video, I really hope this is working. I think that should be it. I'm just going to see if any comments come in. If anyone is on just now, can you chuck a comment on and let me know if this is working? Okay, I'm going to assume it's working. CIS chat today. It's something that I see come up in the group quite a bit. And there doesn't appear to be a lot of information on it. I know that most of your big training providers, so someone mentioned ACCA, from what I can remember, AAT don't really cover it either. So we are going to just go over some stuff to do with CIS, which is the construction industry scheme. I don't profess to know everything, not at all. I'm just going to go over what I do know. I'm probably going to miss some things. I'm probably going to not go into things maybe in enough depth. I've got notes here for what I need to cover. If I do miss anything obvious, I'd suggest the best thing to do is whenever this goes, when it's finished, pop comments in underneath, and then anyone who's looking to answer questions or is maybe needing clarification on some points, we can keep it all in one place. So it means if anyone ever wants to look in future, it's going to be there. So really easy, what is CIS? CIS is the construction industry scheme. It was designed to deduct tax from those who work in it. So plumbers, builders, house builders, electricians, painters, decorators, all that kind of thing usually fall under construction industry. Common myth with this one that it's only for big companies. It's not. It's for anybody who has someone who works in the construction industry or themselves. So you get two kind of types here. So you've got your subcontractors and your mains contractors. So main contractor would be someone who's building a house. Main contractor is the guy who deals with building the house. The subcontractors are anyone who works underneath the main contractor because he decides that obviously he can't build the house himself. He's going to then sub out these jobs to other people and they become the subcontractors. So he deducts tax from them before he pays them. Now I'm going to go into rates and stuff later on. The big misconception of this, like I was saying, is that it's only for like your big guys. If you employed someone to do a garage extension in your house, and then he decided to help get a bricklayer or someone to help him do parts of the house, that also falls under CIS. Also, one to note is that it doesn't matter if that person works regularly with someone else under CIS. If you only do one job, so that plumber, that house conversion, or the garage conversion that you're doing, he gets the bricklayer in to do the bricklaying. So he maybe uses that same guy for every garage conversion that he gets the job for. It won't matter if he gets one a year, one a month, or one a week. You still need to put that on CIS returns. So that still needs to be declared under the CIS system. So again, like I say, it applies to your big house builders all the way down, and it will apply to small plumbers or anyone who's doing small jobs that gets someone else in construction to give them a hand. They need to be declared on contractor returns to HMRC. Exceptions to the rule, ordinary households in that, so I decide to pay for the plumber to come and do a job in my house, I'm obviously not going to deduct CIS. Okay, so it's only for people who work together in the construction industry scheme. It's not for general households. Non-construction, so someone gets the top guy in to do kind of offices or something like that. They wouldn't necessarily do CIS themselves. The trigger for this, and I've just read up the rules yesterday, is except where they spend more than £1 million averaged over a 3-year period, then they are deemed contractors and they will have to declare under CIS. So again, this is usually just construction to construction. So I'm getting mixed up here. You've got your two types. You've got your subcontractor and your contractor. So the contractor is the guy at the top. He's the one that decides if he wants to get the job in. So maybe someone will pay him under CIS to do the bigger jobs. He's the guy, like I say, at the top. If he employs anyone out to help him, he's then got the subcontractors which come in underneath. You can be both. So you can be a mains contractor. So you can be the guy at the top who's so he's been given a job by, I'm trying to think of an example here that's going to explain it the best. A housing company or who spends quite a lot of money on windows for houses. So there, although that housing, maybe it's to do with a council or someone like that, isn't the construction. So remember, we're going back to your deemed contractors at this point because they probably spend quite a lot of money over the 3-year period. They decide to take on a window company to install the windows. So they have to deduct tax from the main contractor. So this is the window company, has become a main contractor as well. So they get their tax deducted. They have now got the job. So they're the main contractor. They decide to get people to help them do the job. So they've now employed subcontractors. So he can now be both. So he's the main contractor because he's dealing with the subbies to go and help him do the jobs. But he's also a subcontractor because he's been subcontracted from the council to get the job done in the first place. So you can be both, is what I'm saying. This person here, this window company, it would not matter whether he is a sole trader, limited company, or he's in a partnership. CIS applies to all three. Okay, so we'll go into more depth about the differences and what you do with CIS when you're each of these people. Fundamentally, same thing. So you have tax deducted from you, whether you are a limited company, partnership, sole trader. The only difference is what we do with that CIS. So we've got the council who's got the guy in to do the windows and then all his subcontractors. So the guy who's got the windows, so the guy who's now the main contractor, what he needs to do is, he needs to then, if you see me looking off here, it's because I've got all these notes, he needs to register for the CIS system. So going back a wee bit here, whenever you're doing any work in construction, you need to register. Now, if you're a sole trader, you can do that at the point if you don't have a UTR already. You can do this at the point when you put in an application to become registered for self-assessment. So right at the bottom, there's a tick box that will say, do you intend to work in the construction industry scheme? What you do is you tick it at that point so that will already set off the CIS scheme for you, and they will issue your verification number. I say issue, they don't actually issue it. Verification numbers are something that never actually get specifically issued. It's not like a UTR, it won't come out in the mail or anything, but HMRC keep them so that they know that you're verified. The reason you need to be verified has to do with tax rates and what you get taxed at, but we'll come back to that in a little minute. So if you have a UTR number already, you can do it in your personal tax account. So this is for sole traders. So you can do it in your personal tax account if you're already registered for self-assessment and then you later decide to go under CIS. Okay, so you can do it that way. You can do it online for limiteds and partnerships, or you can call HMRC and do it. I know right now is probably not the best idea to call HMRC to do anything, so you can do these things online, and I will put links at the bottom of the video once we're finished here that's going to take you to places you can do this. But you do need to register. So whether you're going to be a contractor or subcontractor, you have to register for CIS with HMRC. If you don't, it will affect the tax rate. And again, we're going to come back to this in a minute. So once you've registered, you can then do this for for your kind of more subby part. So you get your verification to be the main contractor. If you want to then take on subcontractors, you have to register for PAYE basically. So PAYE, when you do the registrations, you have to make it apparent at that point that you also want to employ people through CIS. I cannot remember if you do that through the online bit, guys, I'm sorry. Someone maybe confirm that underneath if you can remember. Far as I'm aware, it might be on the PAYE registrations because you need PAYE numbers to do it. And you can be just CIS. So if you have a client who's in construction who just wants to do subcontractors, you can do just CIS. You don't need to do PAYE. One to watch for this, because it happened to me last month. If HMRC open a PAYE record because they don't know that it's to be CIS only, they will try and hit you with non-filing penalties for PAYE. So just make sure if it's CIS only that you tell them that you want CIS only. It's a quick phone call, or not, as the case may be just now with the phone lines, but usually it's a pretty quick phone call to the CIS helpline or the PAYE one just to say, I just want CIS. If you already employ other staff to do other bits, adding it onto your PAYE records will work the same way, and it's the same numbers. So same office reference, same PAYE reference, and the two go together. So once we've done that, the reason we need the verification numbers will determine if someone's on the CIS, so if they've registered on the CIS scheme, if they are deducted at 20%, which is when you're verified, you'll get deducted at 20%. If you go to do a contractor return and they don't come up with a verification number, you essentially have to emergency tax them. And the rate for that on CIS is 30%. If you decide there is one more band that you want to go for gross status, so there is some rules that you have to qualify. You can't just go straight off the bat for gross status. If you want to be gross status, it means that no CIS deductions are taken from you. So you'll basically get the whole of your invoice, whatever you're putting into people. Instead of being deducted tax, they'll just pay you the full amount. Reasons that you may do that, things like maybe cash flow or other reasons that I've yet to come across, to be honest. I don't really have a lot of people that do gross status. Genuinely tend to steer away from it because I think you'll agree that at times clients are terrible for saving for their tax bills, and CIS means that they're paying tax as they go along, sort of like PAYE, which means that at the end of the year, they're going to have money in their tax piggy bank to set off against other liabilities. So gross status, you do need to qualify for it. So like I say, reiterate that one then. Verification, 20% if they're verified, 30% if they're not, which usually means they haven't told HMRC they want to be on the CIS system. Otherwise, it's zero. What you'll never get is there is no 40% band in CIS. CIS is never more, usually, when you're verified, than 20%. So there is no 40 band. So there's no, higher rate earner band. There's nothing like that for CIS. To qualify for gross status, you do have to satisfy some tests from HMRC. And a couple of ones here. HMRC will look at turnover for the last 12 months, ignoring VAT and the cost of materials, and I'll go over why in a minute. Turnover must be at least 30,000 if you're a sole trader, 30,000 for each partner in a partnership, or 100,000 for the whole partnership, 30,000 for each director of a limited company, or £100,000 for the whole company. The other test that they said, I've pulled this off HMRC this morning, you'll need to show that you've paid your NI and tax on time in the past, your business does construction or provides labour for it in the UK, and your business is run through a bank account. So you need to satisfy most of that criteria before you will be allowed to apply for gross status. Now, working out CIS, let me just check my notes to make sure I did everything for that. Yes, so subcontractor, contractor can be both, who needs to register, how you register, and verification status. Right, so we've covered all that. Working out the CIS, I will link to the manual. How you calculate it. So you submit an invoice to someone and you work out your gross amount. You exclude VAT in the calculation, so don't include VAT. I'll link to the point on this. This is actually a bit of a contention for me with CIS for a lot of clients in the past. I've had to kind of give them the link to the manual. So it is point 311 in the CIS manual, and it's to do with things that get included or not included in the calculations. Now, Dave Poole, you put a comment on yesterday to ask me to clarify a point, so I'm going to do that right now. Working out the gross, remember we exclude the VAT. Now, things to include, so you'll have things like labour, materials, and then any other costs, travel costs, maybe things you want to charge back to a client. Things like that get all included together, and then we deduct CIS, except So things that don't get included in your calculation. So right now we've got labour, materials, travel expenses, we all lump it together. What we deduct CIS from, always labour. And here's the bone of contention. All other expenses except materials. Materials do not get included, and they never get included in CIS calculation. So you do not include that in the calculation when you deduct tax. Okay, so materials never get included. Now, Dave's asked me to clarify the point that the onus is on the contractor, so the guy who you're giving your invoice to. So at this point, you're the subcontractor, you're doing your invoice to give to the main contractor. The onus is on the contractor to make sure that the material is just the material cost. So any markup or margins that are added to the material costs are subject to CIS tax. So they would get added to the calculation. So materials, basically what you're looking to check is that the material is just the honest to goodness material cost that's been then passed on the invoice. Other things you include, like I say, travel expenses, any other mileage claims, things like that, they all get included in the calculation. So you must add that all together with your labour to do the CIS calculation and then deduct tax to work out your net pay. Two other things that don't get included, fuel except for travel. So the only fuel I've come across in construction, guys, that doesn't get included was things like for plant and machinery. And that's actually the third thing, plant hire. Plant hire does not get included in the calculation for CIS. So we've got materials, fuel except for travel, plant hire, everything else, add it together, deduct CIS tax. Okie doke. Now, after that, you have your invoice, you've given it to the contractor, he's deducted your tax, and then you get the net pay. Two responsibilities at this point. If you're the subcontractor, so if you've given your invoice to someone who's deducting your tax, you have to make sure, now I know this is difficult for some companies because for whatever reason there seems to be this aversion to doing it in CIS, make sure that subby gets a voucher to declare what was paid on their behalf on tax, to make sure that it has been done and that it has been calculated properly. Because if you put in a tax return for someone and you've got no proof of CIS deductions and you're using their invoices as proof, and you put in the CIS box, all the tax deducted, client gets a tax rebate, and 2 years later HMRC says none of this tax has been paid, it's kind of hard to prove that and you were in good faith that that tax had been deducted with no proof. Make sure your clients get proof of tax deduction. So try and chase it wherever you can. Alternatively, if you're the main contractor, so you're the one that's taken off the subbies and you're having to pay them, you then need to submit that information to HMRC on contractor returns. So it's up to you to deduct that tax properly. Legally, you must then provide the subcontractor with a certificate. Now, we're going to go over that next, what you do with them, how you do them, where they go. But if you are deducting CIS from people, you must give them certificates to prove those deductions and that you've then paid that over to HMRC. And if you are the one that's having the tax deducted from you, make sure that the person is giving you a voucher for proof of those deductions. Going down then, put this down a bit. Point 4 then, when and how do you submit CIS? So CIS is done from the 6th of one month to the 5th of the next. So the next returns would be anything that someone had deducted from the 6th of December to the 5th of January. All of those, any deductions made in that period go on one monthly return. It has to be done by the 19th of the month and it has to be paid by the 22nd of the month. So similar to PAYE, but it must be done once a month. If you do not do it, it's a straight £100 filing penalty. Seems harsh, I know. CIS has always been the same. So if you don't put that in time, even if it's one day late, it's a £100 filing penalty. So don't get filing penalties. If you've forgotten or if there's been a mistake, if you ever want to appeal a penalty, you can do that in the CIS section. So if you are an agent and you're doing contractor returns, when you go into the CIS part of the portal, when you go into the client's file, you will see down the right-hand side appeal a penalty. So it's a bit easier to do the CIS ones because most of it's online. So you can appeal them, but only if, usually if it's a nil return, they're quite happy to take off any penalties. If you just forgot to file it, probably not. So just make sure that you're filing them. So I'll say that one again. It goes from the 6th of one month to the 5th of the next, filing by the 19th, paid by the 22nd. So what you will need to do, if you are the main contractor, to put in the subcontractor ones for paying your subbies, you will go in online, you'll put in all the details to get them verified. So details will be name, UTR number. You can put in names, addresses and things like that. Generally, I find it's not needed. Sometimes you need a national insurance number. Sometimes, for whatever reason, it can't find them until you put that in. What you do is you put all those details in, you'll ask to be verified, and if they're on the CIS system, as soon as you click to submit the verification, it will automatically pop up next to their name in the subcontractor list in the CIS bit. This is the same whether it's a sole trader, partnership or limited company. So when you go into the CIS section, it will give you a drop down. So the drop down will tell you whether it's sole trader, limited, partnership. So just pick whichever one it is that you've taken on to do the contractor return for, verify whoever it is, put in your details. So it only has fairly simplistic boxes, so it will be like gross paid, any materials, and then the labour deducted. If you've got 4 or 5 on one contractor return, because maybe you've taken on 4 or 5 people to help you do a job, it will put all in one return, and then it will do the totals at the bottom, double check your CIS, and then that amount of money gets paid to HMRC. It gets paid with the same PAYE numbers that you have for PAYE if you're already PAYE, or if you've just got it for CIS. So it's the same thing. So it's the same PAYE number and the same office reference number, and you use that to make the payment. What you need to do after that is you then need to do your vouchers, so your subcontractor payment certificates. So for each person that you put on that contractor return, you need to make up the certificate to say that this is the gross we paid you, this was any materials involved, this was the tax deducted, this was the net pay, and you need to do that for every month that someone goes on a contractor return. So once you do that, it doesn't have to be complicated. I tend to do all mine, so I do contractor returns for companies online, and I just use the agent portal on HMRC. So you can either do that. I know there's a lot of softwares that will do it for you, so you can use software to do it. But whichever one you do to do your certificates, they don't need to be complicated. I do mine on Excel. There's a fairly easy format as long as you've got the name, address, UTR number of your subcontractor. I always put the UTR number also of the contractor at the top and their details. And then again, all you're doing is transferring the information that you've put on the contractor monthly return to the voucher, and then you give that to your subcontractor as proof of tax deductions. So what I was saying before as well, so at this point, whenever you've got clients coming in, try and make sure that they are getting that from whoever they're getting tax deducted if you're working on behalf of doing a year-end return for a subbie. So what do you do with them? What do you actually do with the CIS? So this is slightly different if you're a sole trader or a limited company. If you work for a company who deducts CIS from you and you're just a sole trader, this is really easy peasy. So what happens is essentially you're working for people during the year who are deducting tax from you. That tax goes into your tax piggy bank with HMRC, and at the end of the year you do your tax return. So all your income, expenses, and you will get to a box on the tax return. If you're doing it as an agent or you're doing it, people are doing it themselves. There's a box on the tax return that says CIS deductions. Does it say suffered? I can't remember, but there is a box on the tax return after the income and expense pages that will ask for CIS deductions. So you add up all the deductions your clients had for the year, put them in that box. More often than not, most of the construction usually end up into some kind of rebate situation, so they're due tax back. And if that's the case, then that whatever's due back to your client goes back to your client. So that if you're a sole trader, that's what you do with them. Okie doke. So you add it all up, take the figure for the year that's been deducted, you transfer it into the CIS box on the tax return, and then that will reduce their tax liabilities. If you are a partnership, similar idea. So you will do partnerships. So I know most of you know this, but bearing in mind that there are a lot of people learning in the group, so they may not. Partnerships. So a partnership is at least 2 other people. It could be 3, it could be 4, but for the ease of talking about it, we'll say 2 people. So two people go into business together and form a partnership. That partnership has CIS deductions in the year. When you do the partnership return, you do income and expenses on the partnership return for the partnership. There is also a box on the partnership return to put in CIS deductions for the year suffered for the partnership. So you put that in your CIS box. When you then go to the partnership pages, now I'm just going to assume that for, like I say, ease of use, you've got 2 partnerships who are 50-50. You will take 50% of the CIS deductions and put it in the partnership's allocation. So each of them get 50% and 50% of the profits. When you come to do the individual tax returns for each of the partners, so that all of this goes on the main partnership return, we're now on to doing the 2 individuals. There is a box again on the partnership pages of each partner's self-assessment tax return where you will then put the CIS deductions. So the same way it sort of works for a sole trader once you get to the end part is that those CIS deductions suffered will be set off against their tax liabilities at the end of the tax year. And then you put it in that way. Limited companies. Limited companies are quite a bit different. When you get CIS deductions suffered from a limited company, so you work for someone who takes CIS tax off your company, you've got a couple of choices and sort of what to do with it here. What we need to do first is when you're doing the PAYE submissions, so I'm just going to assume that you have a PAYE record at this point and you're paying yourself a salary, maybe you've got other staff who work for you and we've got the CIS in it. When you go to do the month end, so you do your EPS statement for the month. So bear in mind again that the deductions at this point are from the 6th of one month to the 5th of the next, which is usually when you do your PAYE as well. So that works out quite handy. You need to file an EPS, and on a page of the EPS, now I can't necessarily tell you where this is going to be on your software because I obviously don't necessarily use the same as you guys. I use Capium. On the EPS pages, there is a bottom box which says something to do along the lines of CIS suffered. Pop the CIS, so say you've had £200 deducted from you that month, put that £200 in there, and what you can do with it now is that £200 can then be set off against your monthly PAYE bills. So say you owe £1,000 in tax and national insurance to HMRC for the month, for you and all your employees, that £200 that's been deducted in CIS can now be offset against PAYE. Really want to kind of hammer home the point that you can only do this for a limited company. Okay, so even if you're a sole trader and you've got PAYE partnership and you're running PAYE, you cannot offset unless you're limited. So this is only a benefit to a limited company. What do you do with it if the £200 that you had deducted, you don't have PAYE bills or your PAYE bill isn't £200? What happens with the excess? So what happens with the excess is we're in the 20 to 21 tax year. 20 to 21 tax year, we will add all that together, and at the end of the tax year, so this can only be done after the final EPS and FPSs have been submitted for the tax year. Sorry guys, I'm going to cough. This can only be done at the end of a tax year, so you can't do it mid-year unless, the only time this will be allowed mid-year, if I'm correct in saying, can be set off against other taxes if the company is in liquidation or administration. Otherwise, you have to wait to the end of the tax year And when the final EPS is done, any excess that you have that's sitting on the account can be set off. It can either be refunded or it can be set off against corporation tax. But like I say, it can only be done at the end of the tax year once they've gathered up all the information and they know what's left to be used. So 2 choices: refund, set it off against your corp tax liabilities. I will put, again, links in the bottom with the guidance on how you do that. So basically, you can either write to HMRC or you can do it, as far as I remember, online. And the reason to say far as I remember, I don't actually do a lot to do with limited companies for that process. So it's been a while since I looked at that, but as far as I'm aware, if I did look at it yesterday, there should be an online portal, not portal, there's an online form you can do it with, or you write to them and ask them that can either be refunded or offset. Sorry, I'm just got a question coming in. Thanks for the live offset limited. Honest answer for that one. So Mov is asking, offset and CIS and limited company, if the client is late in submitting PY for earlier years, can the CIS still be offset against it, or will it be offset against the corporation tax? In all honesty, I don't know. I haven't ever come across that because I don't tend to deal a lot with limited companies. I would imagine at that point you would really need to phone HMRC. Generally speaking, they can only be set off against current year. To do it for prior year, you would probably have to ask them to make sure that it gets set backwards. Generally speaking, usually stuff's done in the year. But yeah, otherwise it's generally made in an online form, whether you want to get the repaid or offset. Most other things people ask me to cover. IR35 and reverse charge. I did say on my post yesterday that I wasn't going to cover this, only because that's less to do with the actual CIS scheme and more to do with construction industry as a whole. What I will say regarding IR35, your sole trader clients, unlikely to affect them at this point, because it was a lot of the legislation stuff that I've read recently is to do with public and private sector companies. So the legislation was to do with personal service companies. So if you're not working through a company, genuinely speaking, not subject to IR35 at this point. However, obviously the same rules still apply in that if it looks like PAYE, walks and talks like PAYE, it's probably PAYE. So that's up to you guys and your clients to then, make that decision of, is it really CIS or should it be PAYE? I think that covers most things. So let me just go back and make sure we covered everything then. So we know what CIS is, who it applies to, what a subcontractor and a contractor is, how to do your verifications, how to do your online submissions, how to work out what the CIS portion actually is, when and how you submit it, what you actually do with it. And I think that's about it. So if there's anyone online at the minute that wants to ask anything, don't think we've got many on. So I think I'm just going to end it there. So underneath, hopefully this is going to pop up with a post of the live on it. I'm going to copy and paste the links I've got to your HMRC manuals so you can have a look more in depth at this. Like I'm saying, this is fairly kind of rudimentary teachings for CIS. I don't know everything. Nobody does really. I've only learned this through experience because, like I say, for whatever reason, CIS it seems to be something that's not commonly taught. So I've just had to kind of learn trial and error through the last few years. If anyone else wants to add anything that they know kind of glaringly obviously I've forgotten, or maybe they want me to clarify a point that they're not sure of, because I'm aware that I get a little bit nervous and ramble a little bit, just pop it in the bottom underneath this. Like I say, I'm trying to keep it all in one place so that if anyone's looking for CIS, we can keep it all together. But otherwise, that's pretty much it. All right. Merry Christmas, guys. Have a good one and enjoy the rest of your day.